Welcome to the Everyday Miracles podcast, where real life stories of hope and inspiration are shared. Every day, miracles are happening all around us, yet we rarely hear anything about them. Why is that? I'm Julie Hedenborg, and I've committed my time and energy to bring these stories to you, including some of my own personal experiences. My hope is that you'll be impacted the same way that I was. Join me in my journey to inspire change in a world that so desperately needs it. Hey, welcome back to Everyday Miracles podcast. This is Julie, and today I have something a little different, and I think it's pretty special, as all of them are special to me. I found another woman podcaster who is sharing miracles, and her name is Liza Lawrence. The name of her podcast is Wonders and Miracles. She lives in Idaho, so she's on the opposite side of the country from me. She's also a mom of 4 children. I have 2, and she's a teacher. And I worked as a nurse, obviously. So we have a lot of similarities. Neither one of us had ever used a hashtag or any of the podcasting technology. It's been quite an experience, and I just loved catching up with her. I think you'll get a real kick out of what we shared and what God has done in very similar ways and to people across the country from one another. So enjoy it.
We got connected. She emailed me and found me, and we have just listened to each other's podcasts and got connected and thought it would be a fun idea to interview each other. So, Julie, thanks for being on my podcast, and I'm happy to be on your podcast. So this is fun.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I remember the day that I found you, and I think actually we're on each other's now, like recommended other podcasts. I'm like, oh, there she is. But when I was just telling her before we started recording that when I launched the podcast, the person that was helping me said, there really isn't anything like this. And I was kind of shocked. And so when I saw yours, which started a few months before mine, I just immediately had to seek you out, give you a review. And I'm like, oh, we need more and more like this. And I think you even had some similar quotes in what you had online. And I just heard your heart, and I just was like, oh, I have to reach out to her. And I'm just so excited. I can't wait to hear what's behind your story and why you launched your podcast. So I'm just really happy that we're doing this right now.
Me too. I am so excited. We've been looking forward to this probably for 5 months, maybe?
Yeah, for a while.
We haven't been able to connect till now. So it's been kind of fun. So I've been running my podcast for about a year. How long have you been doing yours?
We launched it December 25th, Christmas Day last Christmas
fun.
Day. Yeah.
And that's fun. And how often do you do a story?
Every 2 weeks is my goal. So, okay. Yeah.
Nice. And I do mine every Monday, call it Miracle Mondays. So I try to get one a week. That was for me to be more disciplined.
That's impressive.
It's challenging, honestly, when you've got, you're a mom. So a mom I've got 4 kids and school schedules and teaching, and you're working, you're a nurse. And so it's just busy. Life is busy. And so it's kind of a fun project. So let's just start with that question then. Why did you want to launch a podcast that shares and highlights miracle stories?
Well, I guess I'm a nurse, obviously, and technically, I don't know if you know this, but I am actually disabled for my job right now. I have some back issues, so I had witnessed some amazing things working as a nurse in the ICU before I did anesthesia, supernatural things. It really changed my life because there was a time in my 20s where I fell away from my faith, and seeing all of that happen. Just dramatic for me. And I'm talking to fellow nursing people, and I'm like, is this happening to you? Are you seeing this? Like, why are we not talking more about this? And then in 2015, I had my own miracle, which we'll talk about later, that happened in my life. And there were some kind of supernatural things that happened, not as dramatic as some of the stories I share on my podcast, but I went through some things for about a year. It's a really long story, and I was kind of upside down for a year. And then I got through all of that. then they tell me I'm disabled for my job. There was a lot of pruning that took,
Yeah.
and I really honestly don't feel sorry for me. God has blessed us financially, and my husband's plan all along was for me to stop working. I had already cut way back. So it wasn't like we're starving, and it could have been so much worse. It was just more of like, this was a piece of my identity.
Yeah.
So I came out of that. And I know during that time when I was struggling so much around the circumstances of what happened physically and emotionally, it was even on the news. There was a 2-part news story about what happened to me on the news, and it was pretty dramatic. So I struggled. And when I would meet people and share with them the little miracle that I felt like I had had, they would share with me their miracle.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a lifeline for me. And I was thinking, well, I'm going to share something pretty special. And then they blessed me, and I'm like, that happened to you? And every time I turn around, I'm meeting these people, and it's just like, it just filled my spirit with so much hope. And it was like, God is still with me, and it helped me heal. And coming through all of that, like, and I had women in Bible studies that were telling me, like, you need to write a book about how God moved in your life. And that never felt right. And I guess the fall, right before I launched it, I was at an event with my husband, and I had a moment where it wasn't like a vision from God, but I had this, it was like all of a sudden, I got to start a podcast. It just came to me. And I was like, is God calling me to do this? Or is this crazy?
Right.
And I couldn't even tell my friends about it for a while. And I'm like, all these doubts and insecurities. And yet my husband has a podcast. He has a hookup there. God equipped me through the whole thing. But, and I thought, if just one person is inspired, and it's really been something I never anticipated or expected, but it's been amazing. And I don't know where it's going, but I'm just going to keep putting them out there. So
right. I love that. Yeah. For me, it was kind of similar. Just came out of the blue, honestly. I'm a meditator, and I am a purpose-driven person. And so I'm a very loyal person to God. Like, I want to do the Lord's will. I want Him to guide my life. And so I was meditating one day, and honestly, just being still, asking for, I don't know if I was asking for anything, but all of a sudden this idea of, you need to make a podcast to share miracle stories. And I was like, what? I know nothing about podcasting. I rarely listened to podcasts at the time. I was like, I don't even listen to podcasts. Why am I doing a podcast? And I honestly had no skills, no knowledge. My husband didn't do podcasting. Like, it was truly came out of the blue. So much so that it was like, this has to be God's will, because I would never have thought of this at all. And so then began the journey of just that huge learning curve for me of, how do I even put a podcast together? How do I edit? How do I host it? How do I do all these things? And it was kind of cute. My husband was surprised because I'm not a techie. I'm not good at technology. I'm like, I always ask him all my questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? And it was almost like I just had fire for the deed, and it came from God, and it was bigger than me, and it kept me going. And so it was a vision that was given to me to do this, in a calling. And I feel like same with you. If it just blesses one person, and maybe that person is me, maybe that is just for me. And hopefully others along the way are benefiting. But I'm with you, just seeing where it goes, and just trusting that God's in charge and He's guiding the process. And I'm humbled to be an instrument for Him in that way, that He can use me to do this. So yeah, similar kind of experience.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm going to lead with the next question if you're finished there. And these are proposed by you. They're so good. How would you define a miracle?
So I've thought about this question a lot, because I think sometimes we think miracles have to be big and grand, and have to be these spectacular kinds of things. And I think those miracles are amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love those kind of miracles, but I really believe miracles are happening in every day, like your podcast title, Everyday Miracles. They're those moments where God enters our lives, or the Lord changes our hearts, or changes our path or our mind, where we know that it was bigger than us, where we've been touched by that divine. To me, that's a miracle. And Albert Einstein has a quote. He says, you can view life in two ways, as though nothing is a miracle or as though everything is a miracle. And when you see life as a miracle, I think it changes how you live and what you choose to do in life. And so to me, I don't know, I'm not like you, when I would share my God experiences with people and they'd reciprocate and share back. It was like this. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my email. It was like this celebration. We'd be able to
Yes.
celebrate together and glorify God. And it was so lifting, like, oh, we're feeding each other through the Spirit. And I just love things like that. So
Yeah.
how do you see miracles? I'm going to close out my Facebook.
Oh, well, actually, that's my Facebook banner. It's that Einstein quote. So
Mine too. That's on my website. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things I was like, oh, she even has that. I am definitely an everyday miracle type girl. And I think even, sometimes the Holy Spirit will put someone on your heart. I did this the other day at the gym, and I was in the parking lot and I was like, oh, I need to pray for so-and-so. And so I sat there in the parking lot and it was probably 100 degrees. I was like typing out this prayer, just a random prayer. And then to get a text back saying, oh my goodness, the timing of this, you have no idea. Like, that is a miracle.
I love that. Yes.
For this Holy Spirit to work through us and to respond. And I'm learning more and more, those little nudges that you get, that is the Holy Spirit working through you. And never underestimate the power of just the smallest thing. So I think it's simply a divine power. I think for me, it's Jesus, just acting on our behalf in a way that might be unexplainable, or it might include something supernatural, or it could be something so simple, simple, but he's always looking out for us.
I love that. I totally agree. We're like kindred spirits here, saying like, we resonate with this.
Yes.
So, doing your podcast, let me read this. In what ways has your faith been strengthened when you interview people with their miracle stories?
Well, like you said earlier, I had no idea just how much this was going to bless me. Like, I felt honored to be a vessel. I didn't feel worthy of having this podcast. I mean, all the voices in my head, like, who do you think you're, Katie Couric, Oprah / Bible specialist? I had all these insecurities, I mean, I had issues, running. I mean, I didn't want to get into that, but, it was something I had to really step into and pray a lot about. But as far as my faith growing, I mean, the way, I said earlier, I didn't know if this was a calling that God was actually calling me to. I know it is now. The way things have unfolded, and I'm trying to journal all of it because it's almost like the war room. In the beginning, I was like, whoa, okay, I kind of lied. I didn't mean to, but I said I had all these amazing guests lined up, and I did in my head. I just assumed they would all want to share what they shared with me. And slowly but surely, almost every single one of them was like, it's not for me, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And so I went, did I pray? And no, not, I had to do this. I'm doing this. Right. So I go to my pastor and my campus pastor. I go to a mega church. So, nicest guy. And I've been there 10 years. And, I said, I'm thinking about doing this. And I was hesitant to go right to my church. I don't want it to be all one faith. I really want it. Jesus is at the center for me, but I want it to be all kinds of people.
Me too.
And I loved what you said about how, one faith does not have the monopoly on heaven. I was like, oh, I love this woman. Because I believe that. And I do believe in the Bible, obviously, just to clarify that. But, so I go to him And he's so nice. He takes me on this tour of the main system campus, and I meet all these people. And he and I are sitting in Starbucks, and he's like, "You're gonna have to like be selective. I got so many, and we got to make all these buckets and make all these goals." And we were planning this podcast. Not one person came through. Here I am. I've gone on and I've promised all these things. And so I came home and I was humbled right there.
Yeah.
And, I was on fire to do something for God, and my heart was in the right place. But, I really felt like, and that was no fault of the pastor at all. That was God. I realized that's God telling me, girlfriend, this is not Joel's podcast. This is mine. And God's. And so I said, God, if you want me to do this, I'm praying you have to guide me, and I'm trusting you, and whatever. And I'm not kidding. When I get down and pray, it's amazing. I could tell you endless stories of the random ways people come into my life with a testimony. And I love hearing it. And I'm sure you hear this too. When people say, God's placing it on my heart, it's time to share. Oh,
yes.
It's like, that's what this was created for.
Yes.
And so I really have not had to go to one church. I've not had to, I pray and they come. Sometimes they come in like multiples. Like I had 4 grief at one time. And it's like, okay, God, I hear what's on your heart. I literally feel like there's this connection, and I have to I have to let him lead it. And so it's been humbling, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. So my faith through just hearing the stories and being led so clearly, like big fat breadcrumbs. Like it's right. I don't know where it's going. Like I said, but do you resonate with that?
I totally do. And it's been interesting when I try to take charge. It doesn't work. And when I step back and go, and I've had so many lessons in this journey of podcasting of, I've got this, I'm in charge, and I just have to calm down, because I've had people fall through where I'm like, wait, I needed that story. And then someone will come up and I'll pray, and it'll be like, here's your next person. And so I have been so humbled by that process too, that the Lord is guiding this and leading this and sending people to me, and beautiful stories that I don't even know. You think the stories that you want. But they're coming in his way and his timing, and who needs it. And I love the times when I'll ask people and they'll say no, and then they'll come back later and say, I'm feeling like it's time. It's like, okay. Yes. And so I love that. And I guess that was one of my questions too, is what would you say to people who are reluctant in sharing their miracle stories? Because sometimes I've had people say, it feels like it was too sacred, or it was too special. What do you say to that when people, are nervous to share?
That, like I said, in that first run when I was like, okay, here it is. Here, come on,
here's my lineup.
Yeah. So, and I had people saying, Anna, I was shocked, but I never push ever. And I really trust, I know one girl had an amazing testimony. She struggled with some depression, and it was around Christmas when I launched. And she was like, I'm just struggling right now. And I feel like going through all this in some ways would be, obviously that's like a hard stop, Right. I never push anyone. And I encourage them, like, I just want you to know, if you ever feel like God is putting it on your heart, and I could throw up that verse in Psalms about, sharing your testimony, and your testimony has power. And sometimes that's tempting, but, and sometimes when they listen and they hear, like I've had people come back around and say, okay, and, so yeah, I don't push. I really don't. I feel like that's part of God leading both of us. And I always encourage people, pray. Prayer has been most of the engine behind all of it. And before we record, before, when we're putting your story together, I would say pray in advance. And so I just take that as a sign that's not it.
Yeah. I love that. And I've struggled with encouraging people, but being respectful too of their readiness, that it's, when they're ready, when they feel that it's been placed on their heart and it's time to share, they'll come back. and maybe not, maybe it was a personal experience for them. Maybe that was just for them. But I do believe that in sharing these stories, it edifies everyone, because I'm so edified, and I guess I just assume everyone will be, when we hear these stories. Although I think of the scriptures, we wouldn't have any books of scripture if people didn't share their testimonies and experiences and miracle experiences with God and Jesus Christ, so there is an important purpose in sharing, I feel like. And if people can maybe catch that vision or feel that sense, they might feel a little more, just less reluctant to share, maybe a little more willing to share and not so nervous. Plus, doing something public makes people nervous too, I think. And so I reassure everyone, I promise I can edit any mistakes you make, I can edit them out. I'll make you sound so.
So I want to ask you a question if I can. I know I talked about my little surprise with how I was going to line up the episodes.
Right.
Have you had anything that really took you by surprise or off guard in doing this podcast?
That took me by surprise. Honestly, what took me by surprise was how I did it. Because it was well beyond my skill level or expertise or knowledge. And once again, it was just a testimony that this was the Lord's project and it wasn't mine, and he was guiding this whole thing. But that surprised me and my husband. Honestly, we would comment like, you've just really stuck with this and not quit when it got hard. Because there were times when I was like, I do not understand this piece of the technology. And it was mostly the technology. And marketing is hard for me. And so that's been probably another huge learning curve, is social media and the marketing. And I'm still not great at that, but I just trust that things will fall into place as they're going and the Lord's in charge. But my biggest surprise was that I actually did it, honestly.
Yes. And you're doing it every week, and you're doing all the editing. I'm not doing that. I have help with that. So to do it every week and do all the editing, and I do the writing, but that's a lot of work. You're doing. So I'm really impressed with what you're doing, and I want to take some of those classes.
Yeah. Udemy is great for any kind of skill you want to learn. Jump on and take a podcasting class. People who come to me, they'll ask me, they'll say, can you help me start a podcast? And I'll steer them there. Like, go take this class. It'll, teach you everything. So,
yes.
But yeah. So yeah, I think that was my biggest surprise. And just what we've talked about, just that when I try to take charge of it, it doesn't flow as well as when I just let back, trust that the Lord is leading it all. And I stand back in awe of, thank you. You've got this.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that.
I still want to hear your miracle.
I know. Let's share some miracle stories. Let's do that right now. So this is just one that I haven't shared on my podcast. I was trying to think of ones that I haven't actually shared, but this one was 12 years ago, I think. And my husband and I, we'd had 3 children, and we were thinking we were done. Like, I have all C-sections. I'm on bed rest. I throw up the whole 9 months. Pregnancies are not my favorite thing. And so after 3, I was like, I think we're done. Let's just be done. And both my husband and I, at separate times, not the same night or not even in the same months, I had a dream that I had a little girl, another little girl. And I have my oldest is a boy, I have a girl, and then I have another boy. And so it was like this little girl was in my life. And I remember the dream. We were out in nature, walking around, and she had this long, cute hair, and I was holding her hand, and I was like, oh, I have another baby, but I don't know about this. I don't know if I can do this. And my husband was for sure done. He was done it too. And so he was like, not another one. But he also had a dream of a little girl, a separate dream from mine in a separate time. And so both of us had kind of this manifestation, a divine. I think dreams are divine in many ways. I think they're messages that we can receive. And so if and I shouldn't say all dreams, but there are certain dreams where like this is
Yes.
from God. And so we both had these dreams of a little girl, and I just trusted in the Lord's timing and trusted in, okay, whenever you need her here, let me know. And it was kind of funny. There was a night my husband was, kind of frisky, like and I thought, I'm going to get pregnant. If we do anything tonight, this isn't going to work. And I honestly, this is kind of embarrassing, but I paused and I prayed about it. I'm like, okay, if we're intimate tonight, I'll get pregnant. And the Spirit said to me, the Holy Spirit was, get her here. I have other work for you to do. And I was like, okay. So we got pregnant that night. And then it was really kind of funny. And there was a piece to this even before we ended up getting pregnant. My son, my oldest son, Isaac, was very, very intuitive as a little boy. And he came to me one day, and he was like 6 years old. And this was probably right before we got pregnant with my baby, Emma. And he said, Mom, I saw your other baby. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I saw your other baby. And he goes, she was hooked up. She had lots of tubes, and she came to a really dirty world, is what he said. And he's
Oh
just
my
telling
goodness.
me his dream. Like, he had this dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, she's in a machine. She has tubes, and she's in a really dirty world. And she came from a really clean world, is what he said. So
Oh,
this was his dream. And I'm just asking him questions and, kind of, but not really thinking anything. And then we felt impressed, like, it's time to have this another baby. And, but we were so hoping during the ultrasound, we thought, well, this better be the girl, because we can't do this again. Like, please be a girl. And she was a girl. And when she was born, so I was on bed rest for the last 2 months. We were trying to get her to 38 weeks and just make sure that she was big enough and viable. And we were able to make it to 38 weeks, but when she was born, she still needed oxygen. She was low blood sugar, so she was hooked up to all sorts of machines and tubes. And my cute little Isaac saw that before, and I thought, holy cow, this is pretty amazing and miraculous that we were all kind of being touched with this one little daughter that needed to come at that time. So
that is amazing.
yeah. So I
That's
love things
amazing.
like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just confirmation.
I
When you have
know.
multiple people like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And she's
Yeah.
doing fine.
Yep. She did fine. She just needed a little extra help for a couple hours, and then she perked right up and she's been
Oh,
healthy and great, and kind of my spunky. She is a fighter. She is a spunky little feisty spirit.
yes. My daughter is the same. Yes. Tell
So
me it's
yeah.
going to be great later.
I know. I'm not looking forward to it. She's 11 and it's hitting. Those hormones are hitting. And I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's beautiful. And it's funny. I'm getting ready to do an episode on dreams because
Nice.
I had a dream of, I had an experience, and then someone wrote in, and I thought, oh, I see an episode forming here because God spoke to people in dreams in the Bible. So that's going to be coming up. Maybe
Nice.
it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think both my husband and I receive messages in dreams, because I have dreams often. And there's a difference. You can feel when it's a message versus just a random dream.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
my grandmother came to me in a dream after she died, and she was always a really super strong woman. And the way she died, it was very painful, and there was just this heaviness in my spirit. And she and I had a special relationship, and I think I couldn't get past those last
Yeah.
images. Liver cancer just devoured her at the end,
Oh,
and it was probably a few months after, and I had a dream, and I was in the grocery store, like looking through 50 different kinds of mustard or some boring dream.
yeah.
And all of a sudden, wham, she's like right there, and she was radiating light, and her eyes were, I mean, she didn't say anything, but I was like, Grandma, and she grabbed me so tight, and it was like the joy emanating from her. It was
Oh,
almost like she was saying like, oh, I can't wait to
oh.
share. I'm gonna start crying.
I love
uh
that.
can't wait, and I jolted out of my sleep. It was not a normal dream.
Uh-huh.
I jolted out of my sleep, and yeah, I was bawling, and my husband's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, my grandma." And of course, at the time, I'm like, she visited me. Like I
Uh-huh.
knew it. It's been
Uh-huh.
years now, so in my mind, I'm like, was it really? But I still believe that that was her
Yeah.
somehow, and it was a
Yeah.
gift from God, whether it was a dream or it was real, and I had complete peace after that.
Oh,
I know she's I know she's in a great place, and I knew she was before that, but to have that
to
experience was a
know.
gift. So I
Yeah.
totally believe you with the dreams.
I
So
love that. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And I totally believe that our ancestors and our family members, I love that she came to you. I would say it was real because I do believe those things happen. And it was her way of saying it's all okay
yeah, yeah, it was a beautiful.
and to
So
bring that peace. I love that. I love that. Well, I want to hear some of your miracle stories. What were some that you thought of? And you mentioned at the beginning, you were going to
yeah.
talk about some.
Yeah, that was probably, I know everyone loves the supernatural, which I try not to get too carried away with that in my podcast because it's really about Jesus and the testimonies, but it is fun. He gave us that natural, interest. But yeah, I had a neck injury, a traumatic neck injury in 2015, and it basically dissected two arteries to my brain. It was bilateral vertebral artery dissection, and it caused an aneurysm.
Wow.
And it's a little controversial. I love chiropractors, but I had a neck adjustment. I don't know how else to say it. And that's my thought. I can't prove, just to
Mhm.
get the lawyers, in check there. But it's my belief because everything started after that. But the symptoms were subtle, and I really fought with those that you arrested right on the table.
Oh,
And I didn't realize that I had that. And I was doing boot camp and all this stuff, and I had to stop. I was getting dizzy, and my range of motion was, my neck was hurting so bad, and I had no pain before the adjustment.
oh.
And I know I was told to go to the ER. I was told to go to the ER. I had a small stroke, but it was a
Wow.
simple vision change. I was talking to my son's tutor, and I'm talking to her, and the whole left side of her face just like stars over. And I was just like, and then it was gone. And we were hosting a huge July 4th party. My husband was away for a week. I was by myself with the little kids. They were 5 and 7. And
Wow.
I kept blowing it off. Here I am, a nurse, and I did neuro. You would think I would know something was really wrong. But the tutor left, and she was a little concerned because I was embarrassed. I told her, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you just said. Can you repeat it? And she did. And my kids were all over me. They wanted to go to the pool because they'd been tutoring. And so I stood up, and the house was spotless. I'd cleaned so hard, and you want to get your kids out of the house. So
Yes.
I packed a pool bag, and I'm standing in my kitchen, and all of this, and I thought, well, I must just need to eat something. I don't know. And nurses are terrible when it comes to ourselves. So I'm standing there, and this feeling floods over my body. It sounds crazy. It it went over me like a wave of emotion, and it gave me chills. It went all the way through my body, and I had goosebumps. And the feeling, it wasn't words or anything like that, but the feeling, it was the equivalent if someone had walked in my house, grabbed me by the shoulders, and screamed at me, "You have to go to the ER right now." Like, it
Wow.
was not from me. It was not my gut instinct. And I stood there like stunned. I'd never had that feeling before. And I don't know if it was an angel. I don't know what it was. Something told me to go.
Mhm.
So what do I do next? My mother-in-law just happens to walk in the back door at that
Right.
moment, of course. So,
Uh-huh.
to say these things are coincidence
Right.
is just ludicrous. And she did usually come around that time, so it wasn't crazy, but that moment.
Yeah.
So I looked at her, and I'm just standing there speechless because I'm like, what in the world? And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, I got to go to the ER. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm so put out. I still didn't. And I drive myself to the ER. And at first they almost sent me home because they were like, well, your neuro check is, maybe you've been working out. And I'm like, no, something is wrong. There was a vision change. I had my neck adjusted. I'm telling you, something's not right. This pain, I can't turn my head. So they did a CAT scan just to rule it out, and they couldn't believe it. And suddenly I'm in an ambulance, and I'm laying there and I'm overhearing them talking. And my husband's coming back from a mission trip. He's on an airplane. I'm like, and he gets go in flight. So I'm like, do I even tell him? I lie there in that ambulance looking up at the ceiling of that, and I hear them talking, and I realize how critical it is. And I'm going to the ICU, and my party, first question I had was, is my party canceled?
Right. You can cancel my party.
Everyone's texting me like, what are you bringing? Can I bring brownies? And I'm oh my gosh, I don't even tell them what's happening. And so,
oh man,
I end up downtown in the hospital, and I had 3 days laying in the ICU to think about all this. And they couldn't find any reason this would happen, but they couldn't believe the damage to both of my vertebral arteries. And the stroke was transient, but I do have an aneurysm that actually still getting followed for that. But it's stable, and I am just so blessed. I will take aspirin the rest of my life and be happy because I get to see my kids blow out their candles. Right. And, just not long after that, that model in California had one dissection, and she was dead that night. Like, she died. Oh. It killed her. So I know something told me to go. And I read later in the literature that typically you have a stroke and die, if you're going to die, within 10 days. And it was day number 9 that I had that symptom, that sign. It was day 9. So I thank God. I really feel like my time is borrowed. And, lying in that hospital bed and lying in that ambulance, I thought back on all the things I saw as a nurse and things I could have shared more. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was bargaining. I just thought about it, and it was like, I prayed to God. I said, God, I'm not ready. I don't want to leave my kids. I don't, and even when we started the podcast, or, as nervous as I was, and as many times as I wanted to quit, I looked back and I thought about the time that I had in that ambulance, like what I would have given, thinking in those possible last moments, like if I could have just praised God or given him the glory, done something to make a difference, and so, sorry, that all kind of evolved out over like a year or so, but, I had to go through some things, but it's such a gift, and I'm still facing with my spine. I'm still praying for another miracle, which I feel like is kind of greedy, honestly, but, they want to fuse most of my spine on 2 sides, the back and the left side, and I will be basically like a 70-year-old with my range of motion. So the quality of my life will be greatly affected if I do it. So I feel like in the time I have left, and I'm taking care of myself in the morning, and doing the podcast is just, I feel good about the fact that the next time I might be in an ambulance, I can at least say I tried to do something that glorified God. As small as it might be, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And I think when we have those, I haven't had like a death facing experience, but I think when we do have those, some people call them fear death experiences instead of near death experiences, but where you could die in this experience. I think those change us.
It's a gift.
It is a gift, and changes our perspective and our motivation and our intent and our heart, I think. And I do love those. I think there's such powerful miracles in our personal lives when the Lord it's almost a moment of awakening, like, okay, I'm going to change right now your perspective and through this experience, if we choose to let it. If we choose to receive that as a gift. But yeah, neat. What a beautiful experience. I've had experiences like that where it's like this rush of feeling or energy that just like encompasses your whole system, that you're like, where did that come from? Like, that is not, that is of a divine source. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. What a neat miracle. That is beautiful. And I'm glad you survived and are here with your kids and doing this podcast. It is, I think, it's an act of love, and it's a act of service to offer to the world. Because, as you know, we're not getting paid for this. It's not
No,
like we make any money.
no. And I think it does, though. It really so far has helped more people people reach out all the time. I'm sure they do, you too, and say, man, I really needed to hear that
Mhm.
pancreas cancer miracle. I needed to
Yes.
hear, and it's just, I think too, it's so funny how with our culture and our technology and how we're so advanced, I feel like we're so isolated more
I
than
know.
ever before. And, to have this where people can be vulnerable and be
Yep.
open, and you have all these people piping in, me too. And
Yeah.
it forms this connection, and
Yeah.
it just inspires, obviously leading to Jesus is our whole goal,
Right.
but
Right.
it's just a gift.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's power behind, when you look at just how the world is, and I think you say it in your introduction, in a world that so desperately needs light and uplift. And I feel like the same as the more people that can shift their focus and have their eye single to the glory of God, the more that can be focusing on that, the more it benefits our whole world. And I really believe that's one of the purposes in this, maybe, is to keep people's focus on the Lord and on Jesus and seeing him in their lives, and then glorifying him. So
Yes.
yeah, I love that. Anything else you wanted to add to
Oh,
this?
sister, I could talk all day. Gotta let
I,
people go. No, I just am so grateful for your time and for doing this. And I'm going to pray that we keep seeing more of these pop up, because
yeah,
it matters.
yeah,
And it's kind of a little mini legacy, to just leave behind these stories for people to be able to hear. So
yeah.
just keep
Amen
doing.
to that. I love that. I'm so grateful that you reached out to me and that we were able to connect and share each other's stories and journeys on our podcast.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. As you can see, I loved it. I also want to encourage you to check her out on iTunes and Stitcher, and she might be even putting more on YouTube. So I know a lot of you guys love watching on YouTube. So Liza Lawrence, Wonders and Miracles, and who knows, maybe we inspired you to try something that God's putting on your heart today. I just want to close by saying, never underestimate what God can do with just the little bit that you give him. It just might blow your mind. So God bless.